The metal spine from the corpse began to move on its own, twitching rhythmically as if still connected to a living nervous system. Dr. Eleanor Walsh stepped back, nearly dropping her clipboard as the bizarre metallic vertebrae pulsed with an inexplicable energy that defied all scientific explanation. What she had discovered in that abandoned Nazi bunker wasn't just a medical atrocity. It was something that shouldn't be possible, even by modern standards, let alone technology from 1945. The discovery occurred during a routine archaeological excavation near the Polish-German border, where a team had been documenting previously unmapped World War II military installations. Dr. Walsh, a medical historian specializing in wartime medical experimentation, had been called to the site after workers broke through a sealed concrete wall and discovered what appeared to be a sophisticated surgical facility hidden deep within the earth. The room had been perfectly preserved for over 75 years, sealed away from oxygen and moisture, creating a time capsule of horror that nobody was prepared to encounter. "I've examined dozens of Nazi medical sites," Dr. Walsh would later testify, "but nothing like this. The surgical equipment wasn't just advanced for its time, some of it shouldn't exist at all." Her voice trembled as she recounted the stainless steel tables arranged in a circular pattern, each with restraint systems far more elaborate than anything documented in historical records. But it was what they found on the central table that caused 3 members of the excavation team to immediately resign from the project. A complete human skeleton lay perfectly arranged, but with one impossible modification. Its spine had been seamlessly fused with an unknown metallic substance that gleamed under their flashlights with an almost bluish tint. The vertebrae appeared to have been systematically replaced, or perhaps enhanced with the mysterious metal, creating a horrifying hybrid of human remains and advanced engineering that defied explanation. Carbon dating would later confirm that both the human remains and the metal augmentations dated to 1944, making the discovery all the more impossible. Dr. Mikhail Stevenson, a metallurgist called to examine the specimen, collapsed after just 30 minutes of examination. When revived, he refused to return to the room, repeating only, "That alloy doesn't exist. It cannot exist." His preliminary analysis suggested the metal contained elements not found on the periodic table, with properties that allowed it to interface with human bone in ways modern medicine still cannot achieve. The integration was not merely mechanical, it was biological, as if the metal had somehow grown into the bone rather than being surgically implanted. What made the scene even more disturbing were the detailed records found preserved in a waterproof container beneath the surgical table. Written in meticulous German handwriting, they documented a series of procedures carried out on 23 subjects, all described as having volunteered for what was called Project Eisenrückgrat, or Iron Spine. The notes described the subjects as remaining conscious during the procedures, which lasted between 8 and 14 hours each. Most chillingly, the records indicated that at least 4 subjects had survived the procedure and were demonstrating enhanced capabilities before the records abruptly ended. After examining the documents, Dr. Walsh noticed something that sent ice through her veins. The surgical procedures described techniques that modern medicine would not develop for another 50 years. Microneural connections between metal and organic tissue were detailed with a precision that shouldn't have been possible with 1940s technology. Even more disturbing, some of the techniques described in the documents still don't exist today. The Nazis had somehow leaped decades ahead in biotechnology, then buried the evidence deep underground where it remained hidden for 3/4 of a century. But the true horror began after the team moved the specimen to a secure laboratory for further analysis. That's when the impossible happened. The metal spine began to pulse with electrical activity. "At first, we thought it was some kind of electromagnetic anomaly from our equipment," explained Dr. Walsh. "But when we removed all power sources from the room, it continued. The metal was generating its own electrical field. Monitoring equipment detected rhythmic pulses that chillingly matched the pattern of a human nervous system, as if the 75-year-old specimen was somehow still alive."
Further investigation of the bunker revealed a hidden chamber that the initial team had missed. Inside were 7 more bodies, each with varying degrees of metal integration. One had a metal-enhanced rib cage, another showed evidence of metal-bone integration in the legs, but the most disturbing discovery was a body whose skull had been partially replaced with the same bluish metal, with fine wire-like extensions penetrating into what would have been brain tissue. All of the remains showed the same impossible phenomenon: electrical activity where none should exist.
Local authorities attempted to keep the discovery quiet, but when 3 members of the research team were hospitalized with identical symptoms, severe migraines, unexplained spinal pain, and metallic-tasting fluid leaking from their ears, the story began to spread. Dr. Ivana Petrovich, a neurologist called to examine the afflicted researchers, made a discovery that defied medical explanation. The MRI scans showed minute metal fragments traveling through their cerebrospinal fluid, she reported with visible distress. The fragments appear to be replicating. The researchers' conditions deteriorated rapidly. Within 72 hours, X-rays revealed tiny metallic growths forming along their spinal columns in a pattern identical to the original specimen. Their skin took on a grayish pallor, and they reported feeling something moving inside their bodies. When one researcher began convulsing violently, surgeons made an incision along his spine only to witness the impossible: thin strands of bluish metal actively growing and intertwining with his vertebrae. The surgical team, unprepared for what they were seeing, could not continue the procedure. All 3 researchers died within 5 days, their bodies immediately quarantined by government officials who arrived wearing biohazard suits unlike any seen before. The official cause of death was listed as systemic organ failure, but the medical staff who witnessed their final hours tell a different story. "Their bodies didn't shut down," whispered one nurse who requested anonymity. "They transformed. What we saw in those isolation rooms wasn't human anymore." Analysis of the original Nazi documents revealed the signature of a doctor whose name had been deliberately redacted from most official SS records. What remained identified him only as Dr. Eisenberg, a figure mentioned briefly in Nuremberg trial testimonies, but whose work was considered so disturbing that most references to him were stricken from public record. According to the few remaining accounts, Eisenberg had approached Heinrich Himmler in 1942 with proposals so extreme that even the SS leadership initially rejected them. What changed their minds? The documents found in the bunker hint at a discovery Eisenberg made while excavating an ancient Nordic burial site in Norway. The papers reference material of non-terrestrial origin and biological technology recovered from the ice. Whatever Eisenberg found, it appears to have convinced Himmler to grant him unlimited resources and complete autonomy for his work, hidden from even high-ranking Nazi officials. The most disturbing aspect of the entire discovery came 3 weeks after the initial excavation, when security footage from the laboratory where the specimens were being kept showed something that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. At precisely 3:15 in the morning, with no one present in the sealed room, all 8 specimens began generating electrical pulses simultaneously. The pulses increased in frequency until they synchronized into a single pattern, at which point the monitoring equipment inexplicably failed. When staff entered the room the following morning, they found the equipment functioning normally again. But the original specimen, the complete skeleton with the fully integrated metal spine, was arranged in a different position. Its skull had rotated 180 degrees to face the door. The laboratory director insisted the specimen had been moved by unauthorized personnel, but the security logs showed no one had entered the room. The key cards required for access remained accounted for, and the security cameras in the hallway showed no movement. Whatever had repositioned the specimen had done so without human intervention. Government officials quickly took control of the site and specimens, citing extreme national security concerns. The researchers were required to sign unprecedented non-disclosure agreements, and the entire facility was designated a restricted zone under military control. Satellite imagery later showed the construction of a much larger research complex at the site, with power requirements equal to a small city. What happened to the specimens?
Official channels remained silent, but a leaked internal memo referred to active containment protocols and autonomous movement events requiring specialized restraint systems. Whatever was recovered from that Nazi bunker, it appears to be far more than inert historical remains.
Some force continues to animate those impossible metal-bone hybrids 7 decades after their creation. Dr. Walsh, who led the initial examination, has not been seen publicly in 18 months. Her family reports receiving periodic emails assuring them of her safety, but colleagues note that her writing style has changed dramatically. Her last verified communication, sent to a trusted colleague shortly before her disappearance, contained only one line: "It's not the metal that's alive, it's what's inside it." 5 months after the discovery, residents within a 15-mile radius of the laboratory began reporting an unusual phenomenon: electronic devices activating without human input, televisions turning on to static at precise times, particularly between 3 and 4 in the morning, cell phones calling each other spontaneously, connecting but transmitting only a high-pitched tone at a frequency later determined to match the electrical pulse pattern of the specimens. Perhaps most disturbing are the medical reports from 3 hospitals in the region documenting an 800% increase in patients reporting severe spinal pain and movement sensations along their vertebrae. X-rays have revealed nothing conclusive, but several patients have developed inexplicable bluish lines visible beneath the skin running parallel to their spinal columns. 2 patients who showed these symptoms have since disappeared from their homes, their current whereabouts unknown. A former security guard who worked briefly at the new facility constructed over the bunker spoke anonymously about what he witnessed during his employment. "They brought in special containment units," he recounted, his hands shaking visibly. "Not for the specimens, for the researchers. Something was happening to them. Their movements became synchronized. They would stop whatever they were doing at exactly the same moment, turn their heads in unison, and their eyes weren't right anymore." Theoretical physicist Dr. Samantha Reynolds, who consulted on the case before the government takeover, has proposed a controversial explanation. What we may be seeing is not just an advanced Nazi experiment, but evidence of something they discovered, perhaps technologies so far beyond our current understanding that it appears to violate natural laws. Her career has suffered since making this statement, with research funding cut and academic appointments revoked. Dr. Reynolds was last seen entering her laboratory late one night. Security footage shows her working alone until 3:15 in the morning, when she suddenly stopped, turned toward the camera, and stared directly into it for 6 full minutes without blinking. She has not been seen since. The original bunker site is now surrounded by a security perimeter with signs warning of extreme biological hazards. Satellite imagery shows regular movement of specialized vehicles in and out of the complex, many bearing markings associated with containment of highly dangerous materials. Military aircraft maintain a no-fly zone over the area, and local residents report seeing unusual aircraft with silent propulsion systems hovering over the facility at night. Most concerning are the rumors that began circulating among scientific communities 6 months ago. 3 independent laboratories in different countries have reported receiving anonymous packages containing small fragments of bluish metal resembling the specimens from the bunker. Each fragment, when placed in a solution resembling cerebrospinal fluid, began generating the same electrical patterns as the original specimens. The recipients of these fragments have since ceased all communication, their current status unknown. Professor Helmut Drescher, a historian specializing in Nazi scientific programs who briefly consulted on the project, committed suicide 3 weeks after viewing the specimens. His extensive suicide note, running to over 30 pages, was immediately classified by government agencies. However, a colleague who claimed to have read portions of it described Drescher as having connected Project Isengrat to earlier German expeditions to Antarctica and Tibet in the 1930s. He believed Eisenberg had found something in those ice caves that completely upended his understanding of human history, the colleague stated, before his own unexpected hospitalization for acute psychiatric symptoms.
The metal spines found in that Nazi bunker represent something science still cannot explain, and perhaps something that cannot be contained. Dr. Richard Hoffman, a neurosurgeon who briefly examined one of the afflicted researchers before government intervention, offers perhaps the most disturbing theory. What if this isn't a Nazi experiment gone wrong, he proposed. What if it's an experiment gone exactly as planned? What if Eisenberg succeeded in whatever he was trying to do, and these specimens are not failures but prototypes? The implications of Hoffman's theory are chilling. If Project Eisenrückgrat achieved its goals, what exactly were those goals? The partial documents recovered suggest a program designed to create enhanced human vessels capable of housing consciousness beyond normal biological constraints. Cryptic references to extended temporal preservation and post-mortem activation hint at ambitions far beyond mere physical enhancement. 3 weeks after sharing his theory with colleagues, Dr. Hoffman was found in his office, slumped over his desk. Medical examiners reported finding unusual metallic growths along his spine during the autopsy. The autopsy report was subsequently classified, and Dr. Hoffman's remains were cremated, despite his family's objections and contrary to his documented wishes for burial. The Nazi Project Eisenrückgrat appears to have created something that transcends death itself, a marriage of metal and human tissue that continues to function decades after it should have decayed into dust. Whatever Dr. Eisenberg discovered in that Norwegian burial site, whatever non-terrestrial technology he harnessed, it has survived far longer than the Third Reich that created it. And now, released from its concrete tomb, it appears to be spreading. Declassified files from the Soviet occupation of Eastern Germany after World War II include fragmentary references to a special NKVD unit tasked with locating and containing what they called the German Metal Program. The unit reportedly seized several research facilities and transported equipment and specimens back to Moscow, but the operation was suddenly terminated in 1947 with no explanation. All members of the unit were reassigned to remote postings in Siberia, and no further mention of the program appears in accessible Soviet archives. Did the Soviets encounter the same phenomenon? A former KGB archivist claims to have seen photographs of a facility deep beneath the Ural Mountains where similar experiments continued well into the 1970s. The facility was allegedly sealed with nuclear explosives in 1978 following what was described only as a containment failure. Geological surveys confirm that a series of underground nuclear detonations did occur in that region during that time period, officially described as mining operations. The most recent development came just 2 weeks ago, when unusual seismic activity was detected at the original bunker site. Monitoring equipment registered rhythmic vibrations emanating from deep underground, vibrations that perfectly match the electrical pulse patterns of the specimens. Something beneath the earth is moving, generating energy in quantities that grow larger each day. Whatever was awakened when that sealed surgical room was opened has not remained dormant. Government sources refuse to comment on reports that the entire research facility has now been evacuated and sealed with concrete barriers. Satellite imagery shows the complex appears abandoned, though unusual heat signatures continue to be detected from below ground. Most alarmingly, similar heat signatures have been detected at 7 other locations across Europe, all corresponding to sites where Nazi medical experiments were conducted during the war. A whistleblower from within the containment operation recently released documents suggesting that the metal specimens do not merely generate electrical fields, they transmit signals. Complex patterns of pulses have been recorded and partially decoded, revealing what appears to be a set of coordinates. The coordinates point to a location in Antarctica, specifically an area explored by German expeditions in 1938 and 1939. These things are calling home, the whistleblower stated in an encrypted message before disappearing. And something is answering. Residents near the original bunker site have begun reporting unusual dreams, identical dreams, in which they find themselves walking toward the facility at night. In these dreams, they describe feeling a pulling sensation along their spines and hearing a voice that speaks directly into their minds in a language they don't understand but somehow comprehend. The voice reportedly asks them to prepare for integration and become vessels for what waits below. Local health authorities have noted a 27% increase in sleepwalking incidents in the area, with several cases of residents being found walking toward the facility in the middle of the night with no memory of leaving their homes. Most disturbingly, medical examinations of these individuals have revealed subtle anomalies in their spinal X-rays, faint but distinctive shadowing along the vertebrae that medical professionals have been unable to explain. The current status of the specimens themselves remains classified, but thermal imaging satellites operated by private research organizations have detected a steady increase in heat signatures from the facility. Whatever is generating this heat appears to be multiplying or growing, with energy output doubling approximately every 48 hours. If this pattern continues, the energy being generated will equal that of a small nuclear reactor within 2 weeks. What are we facing here? Is this simply an advanced Nazi experiment finally discovered, or evidence of something far more sinister? Perhaps confirmation that the Third Reich had indeed made contact with forces beyond our understanding? The seamless integration of metal and bone, the continued electrical activity 75 years after death, the spreading effect on those who come in contact with the specimens, all point to technology that should not have existed then and challenges our understanding of what's possible even now. The full truth about Project Eisenrückgrat and what Dr. Eisenberg discovered in that Norwegian ice cave may never be known to the public. But one thing is becoming increasingly clear. Whatever was sealed in that bunker in 1945 wasn't just a failed experiment or an atrocity to be hidden away. It was something the Nazis themselves feared enough to bury deep underground, sealing it away from the world. And now it's awake. A final chilling detail emerged just days ago. Analysis of soil samples from the excavation site revealed traces of the same metallic substance found in the specimens, not just inside the bunker, but in the surrounding earth, extending outward in a perfect circle. The concentration of these particles decreases with distance from the site, but they have been detected up to 7 miles away. More concerning, the pattern of distribution suggests these particles are actively spreading, moving through the soil like a slow-motion shockwave emanating from the bunker. Whatever was contained in that sealed surgical room isn't just moving, it's growing, spreading. And if the calculations of the few scientists still willing to study this phenomenon are correct, it's doing so at an accelerating rate. Have you ever wondered what secrets remain buried beneath the surface of our history? What technologies were developed in the darkest corners of human experimentation, hidden away when their creators realized they had gone too far? The metal spines found in that Nazi bunker represent something science still cannot explain, and perhaps something that cannot be contained. If you found this investigation disturbing, leave a comment below with the word Eisenberg so I know you made it to the end of this dark journey. What do you think those metal spines are truly connected to?
Could the Nazi researchers have tapped into technology beyond human understanding? Subscribe to the channel for more hidden historical horrors that continue to affect our present day. And share this video with those brave enough to face the darkest secrets of our past. The truth remains buried, but not for much longer.